Good evening. I'm Renee Garrity, and I'll be co-hosting tonight's Café Muse Literary Salon with Karen Alanier. For the first time since COVID, we are live from the Writers Center in Bethesda, Maryland. It's good to be back, but there's one problem. We have to wear pants instead of pajama bottoms. And let me tell you, that was a struggle. Here we're streaming live via Zoom. And for those of you who are new to Zoom, there is a chat function and a closed caption function on the toolbar at the bottom of the screen. Click on the chat box and you'll be able to participate, and click on CC and the words will appear on the screen. For the audience that's live, please put your phones on poetry mode. Tonight, our very own Karen Alanier will take us into the intriguing world of Gertrude Stein through her thoughtfully and meticulously curated anthology, From the Belly, Poets Respond to Stein's Tender Buttons. Unfortunately, we're only able to feature a few poets tonight, but you'll be able to read their other ones at a different time if you purchase the book. It's available through the link in the chat. And I'll turn it over to Karen. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Michael Davis, for playing tonight. I know it was a bit of a challenge for the people who weren't in the room, but we in the room enjoyed it very much. From the Belly, Poets Respond to Gertrude Stein's Tender Buttons. Looks like this. Is a 3-book project based on the 3 sections of Tender Buttons: objects, food, and rooms. Volume 1, which is this book with the art on the cover by Grace Cavallari. This reading will showcase 6 Tender Buttons poems and responses from tonight's 6 readers, including me. I will read Stein's Tender Buttons poem for each responding poet, which will help distinguish Stein from the responding poet. I've asked each reader to start with a soundbite of bio and a signature poem, or one that is particularly a favorite of theirs from their own work. In that way, you will learn something about the poet responding to Gertrude Stein's work. To conclude the individual readings, I've also asked the poet to say something about their process in writing the response poem. So here goes. I am Karen Lalonde Alanier, the first poet published by the WordWorks in 1975. And in 2023, I'm the editor of From the Belly, Poets Respond to Gertrude Stein's Tender Buttons. My signature poem is Leo on Seesaw. Leo on seesaw for the pleasure of Gertrude Stein. Little Buddha, little brooder, kleiner brooder, tiny brother, bitty bother, sitting boldly in the butter, in the batter, shaking philosophic digits in the kitchen, for the Kuchen has been eaten by the kitten. Wearing mittens in the winter, hiding splinters in his fingers, finding spiders in the cracks of the plaster. So we left 20 ha 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 in metered breathing, something close to the day he was born. So the first subpoem of Tender Buttons is a carafe that is a blind glass. And here goes the first Tender Button. A kind in glass and a cousin, a spectacle and nothing strange, a single hurt color, and an arrangement in a system to pointing. All this and not ordinary, not unordered in not resembling. The difference is spreading. And here is my response. On the matter of being, 3rd of February, 1874. In a window in and around Pittsburgh, she comes to stress matters. Stress matters in the slide between inside and out. Is she dreaming or being dreamt? I dream, you dream, she dreams, they dream, dreamed, dreamt. The T versus ed irregular, past tense or living verb. The British Channel between learn and spill. Still, what matters, the interior, smaller or larger than the cell. Regarding my process, when I considered why in the object section of Tender Buttons, Stein started with a carafe, that is a container, and this was her first poem of the section. I started looking for beginning information. Could the carafe, that is the blind glass, be an amniotic sac in which a baby is born? What if we consider that the word kind, Stein says a kind in glass, that kind doubles as the German word Kind, capital K-I-N-D, which means child. Stein says a kind in glass, Kinds, is spectacular. Stein says a kind in glass and a cousin, a spectacle, and nothing strange, a single hurt color. A birth is not strange or unusual. It produces blood, possibly that hurt color. So looking back at my poem on the matter of being, with the date the 3rd of February, 1874, that happens to be the birthday of Gertrude Stein. Michael Davis is our next poet, and he will be responding to Tender Buttons. Michael, you're on.
Good evening. My name's Michael Davis. I am a poet, a journalist, a tangero, a classical guitarist. I play for Café Muse. One of the things that's got me in here. And my signature poem, I'm not sure it's a signature poem, but I brought something I love very much. This is basically about a tree that was outside of my father's dining room for the close to 20 years he was in assisted living. Mighty oak, with fall the oak sheds the weary cloak that served it well through spring's spell and summer's heat, and lets it lie about its feet, deciding it best to naked stand when winter drops sleet and snow across the land. Now, my poem was to respond to as a plate, Karen.
I will read a plate so you know the difference between Gertrude's voice and Michael's voice. A plate. An occasion for a plate, an occasional resource is in buying, and how soon does washing enable a selection of the same thing meter? If the party is small, a clever song is in order. Plates and a dinner set of colored china, pack together a string and enough with it to protect the center, cause a considerable haste, and gather more as it is cooling, collect more trembling, and not any even trembling, cause a whole thing to be a search. A sad size is a size that is not sad, is blue, as every bit of blue is precocious. A kind of green, a game in green, and nothing flat, nothing quite flat and more round, nothing a particular color strangely, nothing breaking the losing of no little piece. A splendid address, a really splendid address. Address is not shown by giving a flower freely. It is not shown by a mark or by wedding. Cut in white, so lately. Cut more than any other and show it. Show it in the stem and in starting and in evening coming complication. Lamp is not the only sign of glass. The lamp and the cake are not the only sign of stone. The lamp and the cake and the cover are not the only necessity altogether. A plan, a hearty plan, a compressed disease, and no coffee, not even a card for a change to incline each way, a plan that has that excess and that break in is the one that shows filling.
My process in looking at a plate was kind of prompted by one of Karen's comments about what is a plate? And I take this plate to be, it could be a wedding, it could be a dinner dish, it could be a photographic plate. Photography was starting to get perfected beyond the glass plate in Gertrude Stein's, well into Gertrude Stein's time. And I also kind of look at, I borrowed a little bit from one of her poems on, from her opera, which kind of starts out with this movable feast, where we have the stage, the frame, the proscenium, another type of plate, a square in which something takes place, and then move back into a painting. And then what I ended up kind of going with was this massive kind of hodgepodge of plates and sources and all sorts of things that just kind of crossed my mind, moving from this kind of seminal period in European literature, European American literature, into, you know, to borrow from poetry, film, and art. And then I traced it back to a visit to a chapel in Padua. I call this Temple and Tiger. Waking from a frilled dream, Rousseau asks his bride, the tiger, "Where's the trousseau?" "Ask the panther," the tiger says. The panther growls, "Clouseau." Clouseau suggests the dress. The scene require the presence of a real McQueen. The big cats in their feathered boas come and go. Nobody speaks of Michelangelo. The French are hampered by subjunctive mood. They look for food in laundresses. Antoinette's powdered tress spills into a basket. An antique, the Lion King declares, a Trasket case. Question Talleyrand. We're on it, the detectives say. Nothing is detected. Rien. It has been around forever. The ancien rien, around, forever, roundabout. Have a quick look at figure and ground, burps the historiographer. The Scrovegni panels say, like in trays, fish and figures flounder from them. Anne's man puckers for the first kiss, faithfully cuckolded. Nobody can explain how, yet. Love is love, leaping from the print, the page, intaglio. Oh, how they sought. It figures, feet hard upon the ground, joint bearing on joint until we get to the hands, and the hands holding plates, crowns, like dentists, masters of porcelain. To eat from a plate, you need this plate, Pavlov relates years later, and the musicians play. It's a dance thing, a knee-jerk reaction. More cowbell, says the engineer. Pretty pleased, the psychologist parrots. We're drooling all over and over again and again, world without end. Round and about from the first big leaf of trousseau to the last. At the chapel's other end, The devil's arrowed tail pierces ass and scrotum. Who wants to have a party now? Pretty please, Polly says. 9. The next war shouts. None of it. We'll have none of it at all. But cake, perhaps, in the basket? A miracle for the party, like the loaves and fishes. Go ask the oaf for a loaf and the smith for a fish. Somebody will come back with a wind vane that points the wrong way, tail headed upstream, well smith, but lazy fish. Going with the flow, out to pasture, coming in from the lawn when called for milking. But it is the milting that makes milk happen, milting all over. The sea, the promissory fountains and rainbows, chock full, as Eugenius Philaletes said, feed, not egg, descending in torrent, Danae's gold, the first sperm and matter of the world. From that garden, with its feast laid out like fortune's cards upon the bays, the chips stacked in the corners, the guests awaiting the display of the sheet, there is no telling so soon after the conjugation. Figure and ground, far above the great mother and her cuckold consort, Giotto's Empyrean rests, as the ancients thought it must in the home of the fixed stars, the already counted cards, the plates upon which the half-eaten sandwiches of the world rest, carried along in the plasterer's cerulean blue and twinkling gilt, restored, briefly glimpsed, forever. The next reader will be Henry Crawford. Welcome, Henry.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you. Wonderful poem, wonderful poem. I am Henry Crawford, and I'm the author of 2 collections of poetry, American Software and The Binary Planet, which was published by the WordWorks in 2020. My signature poem from The Binary Planet is about world hunger, and I've been privileged to read this poem in the halls of Congress, as well as I had the opportunity to read it in a 2,400-year-old Greek amphitheater about a year ago. And this is the fruits of famine. On those nights, we traced the shapes of fruit until the dark became our eyes. On those nights, we left our fields unhearing the crack of broken roots, the silence of dying ground. On those nights, twilight filled the deserts of our crossing with the vermilion breath of watermelon. On those nights, stars seeded the skies above the camp. Jackfruit guards stood still as celery stalks. On those nights, we dreamed like you of strawberry days on porcelain plates. And on those nights, I made an apple out of sand and watched it blow away. And I responded to a piano. Baron, go for it.
A piano. If the speed is open, if the color is careless, if the event is overtaken, if the selection of a strong scent is not awkward, if the button holder is held by all the waving color and there is no color, not any color, if there is no dirt in a pin and there can be none, scarcely, if there is that, not then the place is the same as upstanding. This is no dark custom, and it even is not acted in any such a way. What is restraint is not spread. That is spread. It shuts and it lifts, and awkwardly, not awkwardly, the center is standing.
Thank you, Karen. And I responded with a love poem, an open piano. It was the day I noticed a mustard jar squatting heavy on the refrigerator shelf. The day I looked up the word awkwardly in our blue promiscuous dictionary. Yes, It was the day I noticed my socks running out of thread, so I called upstairs for a hand. That day, the one when the telephone was left off the hook and almonds broke out all over us. The very day I handed you my driver's license, took your glass of warm, refreshing milk in a careless, never-ceasing way. You know, that day, the time I heard a sound like a salon coming out of our living room. The day I looked in to see the black enamel cover lifted off the piano and keys exploding all over your finite grin. That day when nothing stood between us. My process. Well, I'm just going to blame it all on Gertrude Stein. I'm just going to blame it on her. I sat down with that prompt and I was thinking of it, and as I went through it, and I thought of the relationship that she had with Alice B. Toklas, and I was thinking my own experiences of love, and I wanted to create this dialogue between the speaker and somebody else to awaken them to the great times that they'd had. I like the word awkwardly, and so because that's the way it is with relationships, I love that, and it's used twice in the Stein part. My addition to the poem, and that's the only part that's original. Gertrude wrote the whole thing out of my head, and it was one of the few poems that I did with less than 10 revisions. My only addition to it was adding the meter there. I needed a metronome to get the whole thing going, and so it was that day, this day, that day, that day. And once I had that music, I was home. I really did nothing. This is Gertrude. And the next one is Borgie. Come on up.
Good evening, and thank you all for being here. Karen, thank you, Café Muse, the Writers Center, and the Word. My name is Birgit Sennhäuser, and I'm the author of the chapbook Find Normalcy, and I am a consulting editor for Rivermouth Review, online journal based in Washington State. My poem I'm reading today is not from the chapbook. It is called Sundial, and it appeared in an online journal called Small Orange. Sundial. Scratch, scratch of the sponge on cast iron. Suds, crackle, softness hugs my neck, glimmers at the periphery. My hands perform in the sink's deep shadow well, and light, so much light falls on my lids. Should I lift them now, I'd stare into the sun. This precise hour in March. I don't know if I love its brilliant warmth more than that it can be so easily forgotten. It's new again, new, each time I stand in it. So I responded to a frightful release.
And it's short. A frightful release. A bag which was left and not only taken but turned away was not found. The place was shown to be very like the last time. A piece was not exchanged, not a bit of it. A piece was left over. The rest was mismanaged.
Yes, and my response is a three-part erasure. The bag dreams. Rightful ease. A was not taken, but found. Lace was how. Time changed. Not a bit of it was managed. Not taken for a purse. Exchange as contagion. No dreaming, peerless. A found rest. A fond rest. How did I get to this? I don't know. It took a long time. I thought also, like Henry, about the relationship between Alice, A, and Gertrude, and how it must have been difficult at that time to not speak in code. And I'd read this part as a intimate and secret disappointment. And then decided after a long time that to try and lift the opposite out of that and make it a sort of a daydream, hence the bad dream. So the next reader is Indran.
Indran Amithanayagam. I'm a poet originally from Ceylon, which no longer exists, called Sri Lanka. I write in different languages, in English, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Haitian Creole. I publish poetry books with Sarah K. Hillmarin at Beltway Editions, and I edit the Beltway Poetry Quarterly. And I also have published a variety of books, 20-odd books, and the most recent one, Origami, Selected Poems of Manuel Ulacia, a dear friend who passed away in Mexico, and I translated his poems into English. I am so grateful for the invitation from Karen for this, to participate in this bizarre project, this rare project. I don't know what a signature poem is, but I'm going to read a poem from 10,000 Steps Against a Tyrant, which, as the tyrant is currently in New York waiting for to be arraigned, I thought, anyway, this poem is called Address Beyond Gettysburg. You'll remember that Joe Biden spoke at Gettysburg, and the book is a book written in the pandemic and also written during the campaign against the orange-haired fellow. Address Beyond Gettysburg. We're not going to stop. We have already started to walk, to run, our legs stretching, striding. The wind is behind us, blowing our hair and pushing us ahead. Every day, every hour, every minute fills us with enormous adrenaline, enormous hope. There are only so many insults the brain and heart can take before they begin to fight back. But with guidance from the village elder to dilute the poison barb with herbs and prayers, to get the Russians on the back foot, to invite Chinese to return to business, to let ordinary Iranians drink coffee in peace. But I am not a mere internationalist. No, my friends, I'm running with Iowa farmers, former steel workers of Bethlehem, chicken pickers of Purdue plants in Tennessee. I'm not satisfied with the way things are in 50 states and all the dependencies. In Puerto Rico, I will not ignore people after they suffer hurricanes twice. In New Orleans and the Bayou, I'm not going to stop at building a levee. I will build parishes back with the faith that sustains me and them, that we will see a promised land, that we can arrive there together, one nation under God. And I've only just begun. Just begun. Give me your stories from every community, every state house. We're going to talk among ourselves, one great family conversation around the fireplace, the TV, the radio, the computer, the phone. We're going to go back towards building that great society. Do you remember the dream deferred? Langston Hughes will be on my night table. Congressman Lewis will dance in my dreams as he did in Congress. Blue dog Democrats will have their say at the table, and we will listen to reasonable arguments from the other aisle. What is reasonable? That we spend the budget to get people back to work in good health and with hope, that we make peace with our friends again, and we trust but verify our enemies.
So Indran responded to the poem called More. You'll see why that's ironic when he tells you what his poem. More, an elegant use of foliage and grace and a little piece of white cloth, and oil. Wandering so winningly in several kinds of oceans is the reason that makes red so regular and enthusiastic. The reason that there is more snips are the same shining, very colored rid of no round color.
So I wrote less. I do not want to mirror you, Gertrude. Turn the Mississippi back to the future as the Hurricane Ida achieved, current turning negative, not flowing to the ocean, but engulfing land that once was ocean. This bizarre new world in which we live almost 100 years after you wrote more, we are burrowing deeply into less vertebrates, less trees, but yet we have water everywhere, more, and fire blazing, more. Well, I mean, I'm obviously moved by ecological sort of dilemmas and destruction, as we all are, and then political destruction and the lessening of the sort of the variety, the phenotypical, the genetic variety is being reduced, and the mixing up is being limited, and we're trying, putting up walls and borders at least. So they're in a constant battle to sort of engage with this reality, and I use the word battle we're losing even in language, right? I mean, we're now facing the rewriting of books written by people who are already dead. I mean, who are we, and how dare we interfere with the gravestones and the language that has been safely buried and safely published, and now we're digging it up and making it new? I mean, there's a lot of ironies in what we're doing. As you know, poetry is all about making it new. Anyway, End of Buttons is an amazing book. This is a very, well, I have to use even more of a even more amazing project. And we have to respond. And so that's, I don't know if that's a response about how I work, but I usually respond to some unquiet, some trouble, whether it's a political trouble, ecological trouble, or a personal trouble. And I write it out in a verse and heal through that process. I hope somebody else other than myself. Thank you. And the next poet will be, close us out, Barbara Goldberg. Thank you.
Okay, you have to understand that the first poem that I heard by Karen was the first one she read, with little Leon Bruder, whatever. And I thought, she's crazy. I mean, this was a long time ago. And I didn't know Gertrude Stein, and I still don't really know Gertrude Stein. So therefore, when she approached me with this, I had so much anxiety. I don't know anything about Gertrude Stein. And it was one word that she used that really kicked it off, and that was play with it. And that I know how to do, play. But anyways, Barbara Goldberg, 8 prize-winning books, and my latest is Breaking and Entering, New and Selected Poems, was just published. And I don't know if it's signature. I wrote this poem a while ago, but I think Gertrude would approve because I keep saying she's cockamamie. And so this poem is called The Ballad of the Id. I think she might approve of the playfulness. I am your rose hips and bunting and bootleg, and I am your black bangs, those devil spikes. And I am your spine when you lie down in tickle grass, the zipper, the cock, all glistening and white. And I am the stars that roll in their sockets, that blink on the night. I could be Gibraltar or jukebox or drumstick. Without me, you're puny and pallid and prudish. And with, you are banquet, a wishbone with tassels. That time in the bistro, I bit your sister and squealed on the porter. And who pulled you out of the muck of intention? Who sang hosannas for spunk and risk? Who shorted the sheets? Who stole your tom-tom? Just ask and I'll tell you. I did. The nice thing about that, I did, it. I'm going to have to tell you what's nice. Oh, I responded to shawl.
You want to say?
No.
A shawl. A shawl is a hat, skirt, a red balloon, and an undercoat, and a sizer of hawk. A shawl is a wedding, a piece of wax, a little build. A shawl. Pick a ticket. Pick it in strange steps and with hollows. This is hollow belt. A belt is a shawl. A plate that has a little bauble, all of them any so. Please, around it is ticket. It was a mistake to state that a laugh and a lip and a laid climb and a depot and a cultivator and little choosing is a print it.
Okay, a shawl. The first thing that came in my head was the be all and end all. Just because it was a stupid rhyme and I kind of went with, I don't know what I went with. I was playing. A call is not a shawl, nor the be, nor end all. A shrug for the shoulder when fall turns horizontal. Soft to touch if born from silky underbellies, a fleece, sheep shed before summer. So fine, pull it through a finger ring. So fine, fit for a bride or traveler or king. Everything is reversible, two-faced, sure as faith. Which came first, talit or cashmere? A sky blue tail points to perfection. Not perfection, but display on the counter of piety. An industry can start up with less. I'm supposed to talk about process? I like to research, and I did research this, and I was researching cashmere and fleece and talit and all that kind of stuff. So that was very interesting, just saying. That's all for my shawl.
This is the point at which the audience in the room gets to ask questions. If you have any questions, this is the time to pose them, because there are always unanswered questions with Gertrude Stein. And there are plenty of ways to answer them. And one of the ways that I answer them is by standing back and looking at it as if it were an abstract painting. And so you get various things that pop out in abstract paintings. So in the case of Barbara's response poem, it was a shawl. And I don't know if you understood that her call was not C-A-L-L, but C-A-U-L, which put us right back at the beginning with the carafe that is a blind glass, because the call is something that goes over a baby sometime when it is born. So there's a lot about, beginnings in this book. And so Stein has a way of surprising you and popping up with something that comes back on itself. Stein is about repetition. Stein is about timing that is not your usual timing. And I was trying to give in the readings of her tender buttons, the business about things not being expected. It doesn't have the kind of musical resolution that Westerners are used to. And I don't know where she picked that up, but she certainly got it from looking at Picasso's abstracts. And it was during the time that he was, coming into his own in Cubism that she was able to conceive of this work. And it was just, in terms of, World War I erupting, because it was 1913 that the book was conceived and written and then published in 14. And Henry's giving me signals over there.
Yeah, we have a question for you from Hannah Reed Girard.
Okay.
Okay, and she wants to know, how has your response to Tender Buttons changed over time?
My response has been that it becomes more intense, that I see more things than ever before. Because the more time you sit with Gertrude Stein, the more things pop out at you. It's just like I say, you sit in front of an abstract painting and you live with it for a while and things start to change and move around. And so one of the things that I noticed, about the variety of responses that were given in this collection of 36 people, besides me, was that some people did things that mocked Gertrude Stein. Some people did things that were contrary. Some people went with some kind of current political thing like Indran did. Some people played in the way that Stein played, and we had Bergey's Erasure poem, which was a different kind of play that was abstract. So there were different approaches that people took to respond. Any more questions?
Not at this time.
Okay, that's good.
I just wonder what inspired you.
Oh, okay, with this concept. Okay, so for years I had been writing poems that struck me against Tender Buttons. I started working on Tender Buttons because of ModPo. ModPo was a massive open online course that was developed originally as a college course by Professor Al Filreis at the University of Pennsylvania. And he decided to go live with it on the air. And so the first year, I got this message, and he sent them out all over the place that he was doing this course and that it had Gertrude Stein in it. And I thought to myself, who is this guy? What is he doing? I got to see this. I have to check this out. And then once I started looking at the whole thing and it's in the course actually happened, I said, oh my God, the whole course hinges on Gertrude Stein. And I was like, oh my God. And I interviewed him and I said this, and he said, shh, don't tell anybody, basically, because he didn't want to scare people away. Yeah, he didn't want to scare them away. And I said, well, I'm, this is not something that bothers me. I think that, you come to Gertrude Stein because you have some capacity to imagine and to play. And if you can't play, well, that's sad. I think it's really sad. And so I convinced people like Barbara, who said, well, I don't know anything about Gertrude Stein. I said, it doesn't matter. You will learn by doing. And that's the thing. By engaging with Stein, you learn. So that's how I got involved with this. And, I decided, I was sitting at a bar, believe it or not, I'm not much of a drinker, with a guy. And we were talking about this ModPo course in Philadelphia because we went up there to see what was going on. And, I said, well, I think I need to contribute something to this. So for some years, I led an online discussion with people from all over the world who wanted to talk about Gertrude Stein and what was going on in Tender Buttons. So I started blogging about this stuff. And I blogged for it, blogged about it for a long time. We got another question, Henry?
Yes, we do, from Greenwald. And he would like to know, does Stein use chants at all, like John Cage, or is every word carefully planned?
Well, here's the thing. Stein, when she wrote this, she would go every night, like very late at night, to her desk, and everybody else would be sleeping and she would be writing. And she would put an object out on her desk and she would contemplate it. She was a student of William James, the philosopher at Harvard. And so she was, attuned to what philosophy and ontology, all of these different ologies on, how to live in the world, etc. And so I would say that she meant each word that she wrote down, that she was precise. She was a scientist after all. That was her training. And she did a lot of scientific experiments while she was at Harvard. Yes.
Hey, I noticed that this is volume 1. What is the future of the project? Can you tell us a little bit about volume 2 and so forth?
Yes, I can. Volume 2 actually is well underway. It's pretty close to being done. And the volume 2 deals with what she calls food, but what I would call food for thought, because it isn't always food that we're talking about. So roast beef, which goes on for many pages, which is very different from most of the other tender buttons. Most of the tender buttons are fairly short, but not roast beef, which starts food. So that is really you really have to have some running power to get in there, So in this case, I decided there would have to be a little army of people going in to talk about roast beef. So we have a few people who are talking about roast beef besides me. And also it has a very, what I would call politically incorrect word that's used in the middle of food, which is the N word. And I thought to myself, oh my God, what am I going to do with that? I cannot just randomly assign this particular poem, which is called, I believe, Dining, to just anybody. Just not going to work. Because in the case of the first volume, I took everybody's name and I took the titles of each tender button and I put them into 2 different piles and I picked them out randomly and matched them up like that. But not in food. Food was a different animal. So I decided that for dining, I needed somebody with a very strong spiritual base. And I found the right person, and she wrote a wonderful poem that deals with Shakespeare and all kinds of things in popular culture. So that's something to look forward to. And I already know what I want to do for the third section as well, but I'm not going to tell you how that works because I haven't invited anybody to it, and I'm not letting anybody else know about my method because otherwise they'll steal it.
Got another one. And again, Anna Reed Gerard would like to know, can you explain what you think Stein means by the term tender buttons?
Well, I mean, lots of people have conjectured what tender buttons might mean. It could be a very sexualized rendering. So it could be, on the breast, the tender nipples. It could be something that is like a hot button, It could be something like tender as in money, because there's a lot of issues that Stein had to deal with, and her brother was he was on the periphery of this project because he didn't approve of her Cubist ideas, and he hated Picasso's paintings that were cubism. He just really hated that whole thing. And so he said he was leaving and they were splitting up the apartment. And there was all this question about how Stein was going to, pay for things because they had pulled their money together. They had bought this art together. It was all that kind of stuff. So there were all different kinds of ways of looking at tender buttons.
Started this project. Know that there were going to be 3.
Yes. Yes, I thought there was no other way to do it because I had already written maybe 25 poems for the first volume and 20 some for the second volume and a few for the third volume. So yeah, no, there was no way, they could be in one volume. No, it had to be 3.
Just say I don't know anyone else would have contrived this and put it together.
Well, it's time to close for the evening. We've come to the end of the April program. On behalf of Café Muse, I want to thank Michael Davis, there you are, for sharing your talents on the classical guitar. And Grace Cavallari in her new role as a painter, and her we have a cover art for the anthology. And Karen, I thank you for your vision and dedication to this art, this book, because it took quite a bit of dedication. We've had the pleasure of listening to Karen Alanier, Michael Davis, Indran Amirthnayagam, I got it, and Bertie Zenhuisen, Henry Crawford, and Barbara Goldberg. We also thank the numerous poets that were not here to read tonight, but their poems are an integral part of the anthology. And we encourage you to read their work. And in doing so, go to the link in the chat and you'll be able to purchase that and read them later. Café Muse gives a special thanks to the Writers Center and Zach Powers for graciously sharing this space and for promoting the series. I also want to thank our Café Muse co-hosts who made this evening possible. There's a lot of us behind the scenes. It's Ellen Cole, Henry Crawford, Michael Davis, Majda Gama, Luther Jett, Claire McGough, and of course, the founder, Karen Alanier. So please join us Monday, May 1st at, is it 7 or 7:15? 7:15 to hear poets Monica Gormy and Kamal Matthew. Café Muse thanks all of you for joining us tonight. I can't clap and hold it. Without you, we wouldn't be here. So be well, stay safe. Good night.